Richard, how much money do the governments, both state and Commonwealth, collect throughout the year?
They're currently collecting around about $1 billion a day, $354 billion per annum.
And do you know the breakdown that the states contribute?
The states directly collect about $1.07 of that $354 billion.
Now, you're suggesting some reforms that would see them actually give up some of that money. How do you see them compensated?
Well, it's particularly interesting to note that there's much lobbying regarding the poker machine revenue, which is a disadvantage across a broad sector from a government point of view and a personal point of view. Now, the states can't really afford to forego that revenue on the 1/7 they have. It will make a dent in their revenue. However, across the whole spectrum, the whole Commonwealth, in terms of fiscal interchange between state and Commonwealth arrangements, it's for the foregoance of poker machine revenue would be a very easy matter. It might just be a matter of the actual uniform rate of tax being 27% instead of, say, 26%.
So the Commonwealth would basically take up the slack?
They take up the slack, or we, the taxpayer, take up the slack by paying half or 1% more on our marginal rate.
How do you put that to me when I'm somebody who doesn't use a poker machine, and yet you're suggesting I might pay another % per year on my tax?
Yes, but you might pay less to subsidise the unfortunate people that get caught in this trap.
Richard, in relation to this chart and your proposed reforms, how do you see the mix between Commonwealth and state incomes, and how can you improve the situation for the states in particular?
Well, certainly most people wouldn't have been aware that the state's direct taxes are only about 1/7 of the cake. And states can barely afford to give up some revenue streams, such as stamp duty and poker machine taxes and things like that, despite heavy lobbying over a lot of years by seriously minded people to achieve that end. However, in the overall picture with federal fiscal adjustments, only a very small amount of money would need to come from the tax rate itself, maybe even only 0.5% on the personal and corporate rate could substitute the states for their poker machine and stamp duty revenues.
So there's no loss in either direction?
There's no loss. It just means society might decide to pay 0.5% more in personal and corporate tax, say 26.5 instead of 26, just putting a figure there, sometime in the future, to get rid of these other two revenue streams and fully compensate the states.
In actual fact, it could help the cause because, for instance, the costs of administration of stamp duty could be got rid of as well.
Well, exactly. Anything that simplifies the paperwork warfare is good for the government and it's good for the citizen.
Carbon tax is the phrase that's on so many people's lips. What are the natural advantages for Australia in a carbon tax process?
There probably aren't any advantages at all. But from my point of view, I don't think carbon tax should be mixed up with the conventional taxation system. It should be something uniquely different and separate. Well, we don't know what the future of carbon tax is going to be, so why lock our new tax system into carbon taxing as an integral, undividable item?
Is a carbon tax something the governments of the day have already factored into their collection process? And if so, how are you going to counter that?
Well, I believe there's an estimate of $18 billion factored in, but I'm not quite sure how much the government's spending and how much the consumer's spending, and I don't think any of us really understand that fully yet. We've just come from a culture where we've got a 7,000-page tax act, and the worst thing we could do when we're trying to simplify that is to bolt onto the simplified document a very misunderstood and complicated carbon tax document.
You use the term bolt-on, which I think is particularly apt here, in that it would appear that legislation over the generations has simply been bolted on and reshaped. Can you simply create your taxation reforms?
Well, I'm not the government, of course, but I would urge the government to take a simple path, a path where the average 80% of taxpayers can do their own tax return.
Richard, how do you summarise your proposals for changes to the tax system?
Well, the current system's broken, and everybody knows that. What we need is fairness and transparency, and the only way to achieve that is through a uniform rate of tax. There are many benefits to the individual taxpayer, to the investment fund managers, and to the tax office itself to have a uniform rate of tax. There's also the benefit of knowing the cost of each and every government proposal and its direct effect on the marginal rate of tax for all taxpayers, both individual and corporate. Uniform tax is the only way forward.